Well, hello and welcome to this RYA webinar. My name's Matthew Sheahan and I'm going to be your host this evening. Now, this is the second webinar that we've run, or at least some of these people have run, and it's bigger, it's better. Of course, we're going to say that, aren't we? But actually, more importantly, it addresses a fascinating new angle for a new area, rather, for many sailing clubs. Now, the overall theme of this webinar is the future of dinghy sailing, but within that, this evening we're going to be exploring a new concept for many clubs, and that's pay on demand, or pay to play as some people refer to it. But first, let's have a quick sound check. We'd quite like you to just check, or at least let us know and confirm to us that you can actually hear what we're saying. So if you could just respond in the question box that's on the screen, that'd be great. Which of course does actually beg the question, if you couldn't hear me, how could you hear the question? But I can see all the answers coming in, they can hear us. Fantastic, great. Good, well there's clearly plenty of you out there, that's great news. Okay, first some introductions. So we've got a number of people here, you can probably see from the webcam, there's quite a lot of us around the table. I'll start with our panel, and I'll start with Alistair Dickson, who's over here on my left. Alistair is the RYA Director of Sport and Development. Then immediately to my left here is Liz Rushall of Rushall Marketing. She's a marine marketing and consultancy expert, and she was also the author of the Futures Project report that actually triggered quite a lot of what we're going to be talking about. Mark Jardine over here in the blue top. He's the editor of yachtsandyachting.com and sailworld.com, and has also been a big player in getting all of this together and looking at the research and carrying it forward, and was particularly involved in the first webinar. We've also got someone who knows a great deal about the pay-on-demand model of club membership. Tony Bishop, here to my right, is the Executive Director at Queen Mary Reservoir Sailing Club, and he's also one of the founders of Bart's Bash, so I'm sure many of you will know of him through that. And as some of you will know, Queen Mary Sailing Club has been very successful in developing this pay-on-demand model. But Tony, for those people who aren't so familiar, give us a bit of an overview as to what pay-on-demand has meant and how you've got it going.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so it's not a new concept at Queen Mary. About 15 years ago, the club decided to do a monthly membership style membership, whereby we had a lot of members who obviously, so a lot of people who were coming into the sport and learning how to sail, and it was quite expensive for them to go through the program of stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So the membership started for training for adults, so adults looking to learn to sail. And to break down that cost, that barrier, we did a monthly membership whereby they got their tuition included. And that was exceptionally successful, and I guess not realizing that they were taking a step into the pay and play, the membership style model. And that's 15 years ago. The club's been going for 45 years, and we've developed that program probably considering the last couple of years, with a hire only option looking at the kids. So there's now a youth version of it as well. There's also people can come down and just hire the kits as well. So it's a really established program and a vital part of what Queen Mary does. And we were lucky enough with Liz to be part of the study, so we've been included in there. That's probably where you've seen the stuff before, but no, thank you. You know, it's great to be on the panel tonight, and I'm learning, we're learning. You know, I think we're going to go over lots of stuff that we can take back to Queen Mary as well. So no, good to be here tonight.
And in essence, just very briefly, just in case people are still a little bit confused, I mean, basically, it's a little bit, you run it a little bit like a gym membership, don't you? Where you pay a subscription.
Yeah, that's it. So if you turned up to the gym and they said you've got to buy a treadmill, and you've got to pay to park the treadmill, and you can't use the other treadmills, you'd never join the gym. And I had 20 years running health clubs. Nobody owned any treadmills. It was very much a case that you've got 50 pieces of cardio equipment, you've got 3,000 members, and that's how the model works. So there's a little bit of getting your head around how it works, but it's very much like a gym. Yeah, that's how it works.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to hear a fair bit more about that later, so thank you, Tony, for that. So we're also very pleased to be able to welcome 3 sailing club representatives who are going to talk about their sailing club initiatives and how they've sort of been working around in this sort of area. So first of all, I'm going to welcome Nigel Austin over here, over on my right. Give us a wave, Nigel. Give the camera a wave. Nigel's from Cransley Sailing Club, and you are, what are you at Cransley Sailing Club?
Commodore.
You're the Commodore, right. We're also joined by Matt Wright, who's just sitting alongside Nigel. You're from Emsworth Sailing Club, and you are?
I'm training principal and also got the title of Director of Training.
Excellent. And opposite Matt is Mike Wigmore over here with glasses. Mike is from Itchenor Sailing Club, where he is the
Rear Commodore sailing for my sins.
Excellent. So all 3 of our club experts have prepared some slides and a presentation, which they're going to talk us through a little later on. Also on the panel, we've got a couple of sailors who we think fit into the group that the research suggests are among those who are most likely to want access through this kind of pay-on-demand system. So hopefully they'll be able to give us some insight into whether it appeals to them or not. I'm sure they won't mind me saying that they're both 28, so they're in their 20s. So that's sort of around the target audience that we're sort of looking at. And they are Dominic, on my right, Dominic Turner. You're just out of camera, Dominic. Yes.
I can see myself.
Oh, you can, there you go. And Dominic over there. Dominic, just a little brief thing about what do you sail?
At the moment, XODs on the Solent and J70s, but a lot of laser history in my past, something I'm looking to get back into as well. So.
And you live in the area, do you?
Live on the Isle of Wight at the moment, so
right.
locally to the Solent, yeah.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a doctor.
Right. And opposite Dom, we've got Adam Parry. There we go. Oh, there's Adam Parry, right. Adam, you're a member of Netley Sailing Club. What do you sail typically?
Typically, I spend a lot of time sailing a J111, as well as that I sail larks, GPs, scorpions in my past.
And you work in the industry as well, don't you?
I do. I work for Seldom Masts in Sunny Goss Sports. So nice and local.
Handy person to know. So, well, welcome to all of you. So let's first get the ball rolling with a little recap on some of the background that is behind this webinar and some of the research that triggered it. Liz, you were very much at the sharp end of this. You were the author of the research that triggered it all, and you're going to give us a little rundown, a little précis of what the research was about and what we learned.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I will kick off and try and be quick because we've got a lot to get through and I think everyone wants to hear from the clubs. So as Matt just mentioned, I'm just having trouble switching the slides. Yeah, I was the author of the Futures Report. Some of you who saw the webinar in May will be a bit more familiar with this. It was a project commissioned by British Marine to look into the overall participation trends in boating and water sports, and also to look at the consumer trends, what's happening to consumers over the next 5 to 10 years, and the kind of social trends affecting that. And just to give a very quick insight, this slide, don't even try and read it, but just picking up on some questions we had from the last webinar, there was an awful lot of data and research done behind the scenes. It wasn't just participation trends, there was a lot of stuff we looked at on the social trends as well in order to do the analysis and in order to pull the conclusions together. So it wasn't just a few of us sitting in a room coming up with ideas, it was based on data. So moving quickly on, what did that tell us? The millennial generation, which I've been told we shouldn't refer to as the millennial generation, but our younger generations essentially saying that we've got different interests. They've quite clearly, there's less disposable income around, but in these generations, there's less interest in actual ownership. So things like buying houses, buying cars, this is changing, and this will affect buying boats as well, which is significant for the industry and for clubs. Technology is changing things and has been for all of us, how we buy things. We want to do it instantly, we want it to happen now. And it's also changing things like our attention spans and how we actually do recreation. So things like outdoor exercise is now coming indoors with things like the Wii Fit games, with Zwift cycling indoors against competitors all around the world. And other trends in here are the lifestyle spend. younger generations are not necessarily spending on capital expenditure, but they are spending on experiences and doing lots of different things. So moving on quickly, Sport England did some really interesting research on outdoor recreation, and key trends out of there which I think affect clubs are this move away from competition and a move towards doing things like personal challenges. This could be things like triathlon, Tough Mudder, swim Lake Windermere. This sort of personal challenge is definitely sort of coming in, whereas it wasn't around 15, 20 years ago. There's also quite a considerable move away from formal training. And again, when you think about how we teach our sport, this could have quite a lot of considerations for our organisations, and a move towards the kind of go and do it experiences. And then finally, also important, is a move away from anything that appears to be organised sport and much more towards taking part in activity for lifestyle reasons, might be environmental or health or well-being. Just jumping forward onto some stats about age. Now, there was a lot in the webinar. I've just pulled out 2 slides this evening. I think important to realise that across not just small boat cruising, not just small boat racing, but windsurfing, cruising, yacht racing, the same pattern is happening where we're seeing an overall drop in the trend of 16 to 34-year-old and 35 to 50-year-olds as participants. And the green line at the bottom is showing us growth, and that's the 55 pluses. Now, the observant amongst you will notice that since about 2010 on these slides, there has been some recovery of those younger age groups. What I would say is when you actually I've been updating the slides and the data with this year's data. Behind that, when you correlate the age with the participation by casual participants, you'll find that quite a lot of the younger participants are also the casual participants. So it's not quite as good as that looks. And then just jumping on, I think another important summary that's relevant to tonight. This graph shows us sort of a typical club membership age profile, where there's a sort of dearth of members in the 20s to late 30s, mid to late 30s. And a lot of clubs I know are grappling with this at the moment. And I think it affects the discussion we're going to have shortly on pay on demand. And then finally, I'm just going to flash up, Tony's here and talked about the select membership at Queen Mary. Interestingly, it's the select membership, which is the gym style membership, and the 2 areas where it's really attracting members and the age groups here is the 25 to 40s and actually even the 40 to 55-year-olds. So I think it's very interesting that that category is having that effect. So without further ado, I will hand back to Matt.
Yeah, just before we do, I just wonder, you've been obviously very much in touch with this all along. I mean, have you got any sense of whether clubs have been adopting this research, the findings of this research? Have you had any feedback at all?
Yeah, I think we get the sense that a lot of clubs are looking at the findings, are looking at what they should be doing. Some are experimenting with things like club boats and boats for hire. Some are trying other initiatives. So yeah, we do get the sense that it's happening. We also get the sense that there's a lot of questions out there as well. Good. Okay.
Liz, for the moment, thank you very much. Throughout this webinar, we're going to be running a few polls. And from Alistair and Mark, who are running the machinery over here on the left, you're running the polls as well. Just give us a quick, Alistair, just give us a quick overview of how the polls will work.
Yeah, so effectively we've got a number of preloaded questions similar to the last webinar that we can ask our audience. And as an audience, you should see one of these questions with a multiple choice answer come up. And please just answer that as quickly as you can, and it will come onto a graph that we can all see. And it's a really useful way for us to interact with you and also to find out more about this subject through your experience as a viewer. So we're just going to kick off actually with one and just test. So the first one is your club considering a pay-on-demand scheme? This should flash up on your screens now. So if you could just go on and answer it, we should get the results in fairly soon.
Okay, jolly good. Thank you for that. Good. Right. Now, let's get on with the meat of it. Let's hear from the first of our case studies. The first person we're going to hear from is Nigel Austin, the Commodore of Cransley Sailing Club. Nigel, thanks once again for joining us. Now, as I understand it, your club has really managed to turn around an aging membership, or a aging profile and a declining membership, isn't it? So perhaps you want to talk us through what you've been doing at your club.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Well, Cransley Sailing Club is situated on a former 100-acre reservoir site, established in 1967 and has currently 210 members, including 90 youngsters. Probably typifies what most people see as a grassroots sailing club, and we was in great danger that we would stay looking like that. However, in terms of what was a problem, we did have an ageing membership, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. They were good members, but they were, a lot of them were, when it was set up in the early 70s, and they were gravitating towards being shoreline sailors. So we needed to attract new blood, and relatively fast. We stuck by our constitution, which is sailing for all, and affordable for all. And we kept our visitors' fees and membership fees very low. We looked after a few club boats, but we decided that we would apply for as many grants as we possibly could, for everyone, every type of boat we could get, and for everybody. So there was still one missing element, and so we searched. Our search continued in 2013 after the sort of blip, well, the hiatus of 2012 Olympics, when we found we had quite a few members. We wanted to keep it going, so we looked at how we could woo those folk who were sailing at the club, but also some new people. So how did we do this? Well, so we have 90 boats at the club, of which 65 are privately owned, and the rest are club boats, a pretty significant percentage. And there's a lot of people who will probably think, my goodness, that's a ridiculous percentage, but there was sort of madness. My brother sails in America, and he sails in a club where they only have club boats, and it's a really successful model. They're all very competitive. They all swap boats, and they're all not allowed to sail the same one twice. So it does work, but obviously it is probably a little bit more advanced in America. But in terms of us, we had club boats, but they were mainly all training boats, and not really for what we were aiming for, to try and keep the older members of the club. Initially, that's what we were trying to keep. So we decided we're not a sailability club, but we decided that we'd go for a grant from Sports England, and we were very successful. We managed to get these 3 reconditioned Hansas. We managed to get them for the £10,000 grant. We were really pleased about that, and got lots of other equipment as well to add to a little bit to try and make us into a sailability club as well. So, and they fitted the criteria we were after. They were good for the less abled, but also they actually good for the fearful. And there's a lot of sailors who are fearful of capsizing, who are fearful of losing their balance and things like that. So good for that aspect. Good for the non-swimmers, and they're also, these ones were Hansa 303s, 2-seaters, and actually good for social interaction. You're very close to each other, that's for sure. And they are scream machines, because they when they do actually heel, yeah, it's quite a buzz. So anyhow, we've had them for a couple of years now, and we've used them on open days. We've actually just put people out in them, crossed our fingers and hoped that there wasn't going to be any damage and everything like that, and they've been brilliant. We've used them for clubs, and I haven't got the clicker thing, have I? No. Oh, there, yeah, we use them for clubs, sorry, and groups, Cubs, Scouts, and they actually love them as well. And this was really surprising. In fact, we were thinking that this is this is quite a nice little model, because you can just put people in them, 2 people in them. You give them a 10-minute briefing on the water, what they've got to do, point them in the right direction, and off they go. And it's an incredibly quick learning curve that they come up with. And yeah, they've been absolutely fantastic. And so how's it actually affected? Well, it sort of started changing our own members' perception of Hansas. You know, people's perception may have been that they were only sailability boats, but they're actually in an arsenal of club boats. They allow you for people to come along on a windy day and just go, oh, I might have to go in that. I might have, you know, instead of having to go in a Bahia or a Fever or something. And they know they're not going to get into trouble. They know that they're going to have a good time. So it's more about the breadth of club boats that you've got, and making sure that when people do come up, they can have an experience. It may be adrenaline, it may be, you know, just a nice little drift in them, but it just added that thing to it. So and through this, we appear to have turned a corner, and we've gained lots of a better, this and other initiatives have actually gained a better balance of youngsters and the genders as well. So we're not all the 50s male orientated clubs that a lot of people think they are. So it's used as a unique training. We also believe it totally has energised the youth. Some of the youth like it, those who are rusty and those who are fearful. So yeah, that's where we've come on there. And this is the other thing that we've used to help people get into sailing a bit. It's when we first got them 2 years ago, they were. I think they were unique in this country, apart from Ben Ainsley, who stole my thunder. These are bone conduction headsets, and there are 10 in a set, and you can talk to 10 people in a group. They can't talk back to you, which is brilliant. And it's actually the range is about 1 kilometre away. It's as clear as crystal, and it just saves your voice. You don't have to be shouting, which is sometimes puts a lot of people off, and you can just speak very gently, and you can just cajole people into doing things. We've not only used them for training, a little bit of training. We don't actually use them on level 2 because they're not certified to do that sort of thing, but we have used them on start racing, and we actually use them for those people who need a little bit of progression in racing, and so we ask all the members if we can use them, and they actually come on a treat. People wear them, and you can sit in a boat. I've sailed alongside them and been talking through the headset to them as we've been sailing along, and it's just a very, very different experience. As they don't fit in the ears, you can still feel the wind and everything like that, and you can still hear people shouting, starboard, etc. So nearly about there. What we've actually improved on is that we've actually managed to put this all on Facebook, and we've managed to grow from training, just doing one level 2 course for adults and children in a year, to this year we actually got 7 courses done, and it's just been incredible in terms of we've managed to get 17 new adults through, 24 new children through, and we've done over 100 have come for taster sessions. And I think whilst it may be a soft pay on demand thing, it actually is, people like the experience of doing something different with sailing, and something the Hansas do and the headsets do. And I think that probably that is just little things just to improve people's experiences of the club. One of the things that we do also major on is being friendly. So we want to be friendly to people who come along to join. It sounds obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many clubs aren't actually friendly towards visitors, and that's a big thing.
It sounds fascinating, Nigel, really interesting. I mean, particularly, obviously, there's some really very clever ideas there as well, and some very simple ones. What strikes me about what you've said is that, you know, it's a modest club, isn't it? I think you told me earlier on you got a membership of about 200.
Yeah.
So you're probably very representative. There's a lot of clubs in the country, and so I think that'll be received. That'll be what you've said and outlined will be very interesting. One of the things that just occurred to me whilst you were talking really was, how hard was it to get the membership, albeit a small one, but how hard was it to get the membership on board with doing this? Was that a struggle?
I'll probably do it through the back door, but yes, I did have some opposition towards, while we've got this club, so many club boats, we did, we got rid of the wayfarers and things like that. And we're still working on it. We're still trying to, update and everything like that. And, the grants are difficult to come by, but, if you put the right, and try to persuade people that there is a future in this sort of thing, I think that's where it takes off and where people will come on board.
And would you say you've turned a corner? Have you got, most people are on board with it now? And
I think so, yeah. I think it's a good feeling, yeah.
And and also I think I might have got this wrong, but you were able to take on is it a full-time or a part-time person? You've taken on a full-time person as a result of this, is that right?
No, what we've done is we couldn't run as many courses. We could only run the courses that we historically done. But so we brought in outside freelance instructors, and that was our training principles idea. And it's just been absolutely brilliant because we've got all of these extra courses on, and I think the summer helped. The weather in the summer helped, and we were able to cope with that demand. And I say the extra instructors has brought in new members, because we do the course, and as part of that you're a member for a year, so it's a little incentive.
Great stuff. Well, that's inspiring stuff. Thank you, that's great. We're going to rattle along because time's ticking away. Just a quick thing on the poll. I see that we've got an answer on that.
Yeah, so just a reminder of the question. The question was, is your club considering a pay on demand scheme? 48% have come back and said yes, we're considering it. 25% have come back and saying no, it's not for us. 17% have already got one, and 10% are not a member of the club.
Well, that's encouraging then. Yeah, good. Okay, good. Thanks for that. No doubt we'll be putting up another poll shortly. Right. Once again, thanks, Nigel, for that. Now on to our next club study. Matt Wright is the Director of Training at Emsworth Sailing Club. And Matt, I understand your pay and play scheme or pay on demand scheme came out as something quite different, didn't it? I think it was a shortage of boat park space.
Yeah,
tell us about
It's a bit of a carrot and stick approach if you want, but I think what's important to say is that's a sort of very recent picture of a lot of people having fun in the summer. But we're just coming up to our centenary, and we've been around since 1919. And I think it's just, we were looking back at the history, and actually what happened was when you wanted to join the club back in those days, you didn't have your own boat. So the club actually provided the boat. So I think it's well worth reflecting on that. So we started off with some Sharpies, time moved on, we went on to something called the Emsworth 1 design. But the key thing is that people could actually join the club, use the club boat without actually having to really put a large sum of money into what is a relatively expensive asset. So how did things develop? Well, let's skip ahead in time. And when parents were looking at introducing their children to sailing, we managed to actually sell bacon butties in the morning, and that was the name of the first Oppie that was ever brought into Emsworth Sailing Club, and it really enabled kids to get out on the water and for parents to actually see whether it was appropriate, in the view of the parents, to invest in a boat dedicated for one child as such. So it was in fact a taster for people, I would say. What we've seen, though, I think is, in terms of this carrot and stick, Liz has obviously alluded to the fact that many families are exceptionally time poor. We know that particularly for families, and we are very much a family club, that there is a huge demand from other activities as such. We see racing, it's holding up, but let's not kid ourselves, numbers aren't increasing. Price of boats relatively expensive, and we, this is our stick, are constrained by the fact that we have a limited amount of dinghy space. So what we introduced about 7-8 years ago was a sort of use it or lose it model. So if you don't use your boat, then ultimately you won't have a place to put it. And so that sort of encouraged us to look at what we can actually offer. So by providing club boats, that will in effect relieve the total pressure on boat parking and hopefully just open up sailing for more people. So if you want, there is a link with training, but this is not exclusively where it's come from. And I think that's an important part. So the club boats really came around from the fact that people had to use, if they own equipment, have to use it 8 times a year, otherwise they lose their slot. So again, a little bit similar to what we've heard earlier on. We started with a vision, then we looked at getting 3 Bahirs, which were Sport England funded, and those have been used not only for training of adults, but also in terms of people being able to rent or hire these whenever they want. So that's been quite strong. We've also done the same with our juniors and perhaps also with our, in effect, a Women on the Water group. And we've had 3 club fevers, so we have a way of cycling through those boats, so they get used for a period of time, and then we buy new boats. And we've also just started at looking at whether there are boats which are, shall we say, more appreciated by our older members. So we have invested in a scow, and I think as part of the work which has been stimulated about what the purpose of a sailing club is, we've also looked at moving into using stand-up paddle boards as well. So I would say, I think the fact that we are constrained by space has instigated a journey, but certainly isn't the only reason why we've gone down there. And we are seeing take up and use of these hire boats outside of pure training use.
Has that increased overall the amount of boats that you get out on the water in a given month, for example?
Yes, it has. What we can point to is we've tracked how often these boats are hired over a period of time. So we've had this fleet for 3-4 years, and therefore we can see an increase in usage as such. I think the challenge for us is we would like more members to know about it. So if you want, that's an internal challenge from a marketing point of view in terms of, are people aware that this is available? We know, we played around with, would it have a big impact if we change the price? And it hasn't been that price sensitive, which is also an interesting factor for us.
Now, talking of price, I mean, I understand as a result of this now you've got a full, is it full-time or part-time bosun?
We have a part-time bosun. The comment made by the bosun is that do the people hiring the boats look after the boats? But I think it goes with the territory. And, you know, there are minor lessons of, you might look at a Bahir, and these guys probably look down on a Bahir, probably not putting words into your mouths there. But for people who are using these boats from a recreational viewpoint, they're not that familiar on how to rig them. So we don't think cost is a barrier. Familiarity with the boat is a barrier. And part of the role of the bosun, apart from tidying up the boats after they've been used, is also to help with that training element in terms of this is how you rig a Bahir.
Interesting stuff. I just want to bring in Mark Jardine at this point. Mark, you're Keyhaven Sailing Club, and you're very, very active down at that club. And I get that Keyhaven, you've been doing a similar thing, haven't you, buying boats down there?
Yeah, Keyhaven Yacht Club has brought in various boats, a lot for the junior sailing at the moment. But what I found particularly interesting there is actually just talking about other types of watercraft that are going out, the SUPs, the kayaks. And I think one of the great advantages you're going to get from this pay on demand is if you are attracting other water sports users, it's great going out on an SUP. As sailors, so many of us do that. But if you have 5 knots of breeze, 10 knots of breeze, an SUP is pretty terrible. And if you've already got them in the club as SUP people, then as soon as there's a bit of breeze and you've got boats available, you're going to be able to attract other water sports users into sailing. And I think that's another area where it can really help the growth.
Interesting. Is that, Tony, Queen Mary's, have you diversified in the kind of boats you've got?
Yeah, absolutely. And SUPs the same. So we did SUPs a couple of years ago, and you go for the hard SUPs and the blow-ups, and the hard to crash and the blow-ups actually survive a lot longer. And other blow-ups come with windsurf sails. So that's the progression. And you know, the question is, if you've got people coming to the club to hire kit to go sailing, they need to have a little bit of experience. To go supping, you just need to be able to stand up and paddle. That's it. So actually, to get people on the water and into water sports, supping is a fantastic solution. And like I say, you then slot the sail in, and they're windsurfing because they can stand up, they can hold on to something, and you've got that easy progression for people. So yeah. The other one is the mega subs. So we've got 2 mega subs this year, which are these 23-foot massive inflatables, and you get 4 people on them. You know, this summer at one stage, we actually had 20 people out supping at one point, and these 2 couples turned up, and we said, well, we haven't got any more subs left, so they jumped on the mega sub. And the boys supped and the girls sunbathed, and the girls supped and the boys sunbathed. It was the Instagram generation doing their thing. But yeah,
diversity seems to be the key, doesn't it? I have to admit, actually, I'm still struggling with the term sup, because to me that sounds like what I do at the bar, and that does contribute to profits. You do that as well. Yeah. Well, that's good then. I must try this other supping this people. Great stuff. Well, that's very, very interesting indeed. And it sort of has made me think about some of the clubs that I've been to where you do actually, I guess now I do notice there's a lot more going on at clubs. It's not just down the racing route. Good. Well, thank you very much for that, Matt. That's very interesting. Let's move on to our third club. When it comes to taking a big step, the next club that we're going to hear from has done just that. Itchner is the biggest of the clubs that we have represented here. They're also based on the South Coast, for anybody who's not aware, and in Chichester Harbour. And we're going to hear about their club tonight from Mike Wigmore, the rear commodore. And you've actually got professional staff. It's a big club, and you've got professional staff, but actually you've relied quite a lot on volunteer staff as well. And part of your presentation, I guess, is about that.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Let me tell you about what we do. I mean, it would certainly be wrong to call me an expert in pay to play. We're just dipping our toe in the water on this. But I can tell you what we're up to as a club. But first, a little bit of background about us. Itchner Sailing Club, as you say, is based on Chichester Harbour, but our prime activity is organising high-quality racing for 3 classes of day keelboats and for high-performance dinghies. And next year, we introduce a class of Murley rockets to complement that prime activity. We also have an active youth and junior section centred on our popular junior fortnight, a cruising section. More recently, we've started a rowing division. And I can say more about that in a moment. We are fortunate that we have access to our sailing water at all states of tide, so we enjoy interesting tactical racing. And we're perhaps unusual in that quite a few of our members can draw on previous successes at national, in some cases world-class level, so the standard of our racing is generally fairly high. And this can be a barrier, I think, to entry for the inexperienced. We are a professionally run club with a sailing manager and a boatman and an assistant boatman at weekends, so we are very well covered in our staff. We are fortunate, however, that our numbers are not declining. Membership levels have been fairly constant over the past 10 years. This year, we will organise 800 class races and see over 4,500 individual boat starts. Under these circumstances, it can be difficult to concentrate minds on membership support and retention. That being said, we do have a very pronounced top-end heavy age profile, as you would expect with our successful day keelboat fleets. And that keeps us constantly looking at where the next sailors will come from to replace those who retire from those fleets. On a regular basis, we review which classes we support. And the Adult Dinghy Review in 2016 identified that there was a significant gap in our offering, going all the way from adult beginners up to those who find that some of the current high-performance dinghies are maybe a bit too full-on for their level of experience and athleticism. So in 2017, we went searching for a suitable new class to fill this gap, and concluded that the 2000 class, with its established class racing circuit at the top end and its stability and ability to reef as a training boat at the other end of the spectrum, was most suitable. At the same time, we were also aware of Liz Rushall's report on the future of sailing and felt that this new initiative was an ideal opportunity for us to dip our toe in the water with pay to play. It was felt that this would also help building the new class more quickly, which is always difficult if you don't have a core, an established core of enthusiastic potential owners within the club already. An appeal to the whole membership resulted in the purchase of 3 new boats from RS, allowing us to offer easy to maintain, top quality equipment. And the whole exercise is primarily a membership building activity. As part of the work towards the launch, we felt we needed to change various parts of our procedures, which were really the old club way of joining a club. We wanted to make it more accessible to new members. There were 5 areas we felt we needed to improve. Firstly, we simplified subscription payments, so a new member simply paid monthly from the time they joined and at a reduced rate for the first season. We didn't have a joining fee anyway, so we didn't have to get rid of that. We reduced our rates for families to make membership more attractive to that group. And as this was a membership initiative, we decided that we would require new users to fill in a preliminary application form to join the club and pay their first month sub before taking part. Then they get a free first use of one of the boats, and if they're not ready to take the boat out on their own, we include a session with one of our trainers in that initial offer. So it's a little bit of a case of get them on the entry road before you get them, they even go sailing the first time. We implemented an online booking and payment system. And finally, we employed a marketing company to publicise the launch. We felt that was very important. You know, we're doing something different under new management, as it were. So the 2000s have been used on over 100 occasions in their first year, which is at a level of use which will cover their operating costs, including depreciation. The plan is to sell them on, hopefully, into the club fleet after 2 years. The boats have generated new members. Our original forecast indicated that if just 4 individual and 4 family members were attracted and retained each year for 3 years, then the project would be a success. That's the upside. The downside is they've not so far generated the new racing fleet we were hoping for at the club. Their use has been much more for people enjoying free sailing or for training. I mentioned that recently some keen members have started a rowing section. Here the model is similar to our 2000s in that the new boat purchase was funded by an appeal and the running and depreciation costs are paid for by a charge for each outing. This is all working well, and the rowing complements our sailing activities as it usually takes place in off-peak times for the sailing. So our facilities are not stretched, our off-the-water facilities. Another idea we're beginning to work on is how to link up those owners of underused dinghies with those who want to dip their toes in the water by taking out a boat before taking the plunge and buying one. If those 2 groups can be brought together, we think it'll be a win-win situation. This is not intended to be a pay-to-play initiative in itself. It's a means of transitioning newcomers into our activities, particularly on the youth and junior side. How this will operate is yet to be worked out. We have the difficulty the club gets involved and money changes hands, then insurance starts becoming an issue, even if they're private members' boats. How is any damage dealt with? Do the boats need formally inspecting in the way as if they were a member of a club fleet? Or maybe we can organise this informally, but we think that will work. So where do we go from here? New members are being recruited from our 2000 experience and the pay-to-play initiative, but the new recruits have a big hill to climb before they can venture onto a racecourse with confidence and reach the stage where they become the regular attenders needed to support a club. This is perhaps more accentuated at a club like Itchenor, where only class racing is offered, so there is nowhere to hide if you're not somewhere near the pace. I think that a big support is required to deliver the next stage successfully and bring those new members to a level where they will enjoy populating our existing racing fleets in the future. Or perhaps we should accept that this new operation within the club will thrive in its own right, and the new members will form a successful section of the club, enjoying more informal sailing, looking at their personal challenges, doing it more for lifestyle. So that's where our experience has got to so far. We're a more traditional sailing club in that we're very much based around racing, and bringing those new people on board is interesting exercise. I think we've got a long way to go to take those people to the next stage.
It's very interesting indeed. I mean, particularly because of the scale of the club, and as you say, you're a traditional club or based around traditional racing values and the rest of it. But very interesting to hear that the commercial side of things and payments is such a big thing. I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's very interesting you were saying about the downside being that people aren't converting into the racing. And we're sort of hearing this quite a lot from other clubs. Do you have any sense, or does anybody here actually have any sense as to why that is? Is there something we're not addressing, we're not seeing? Why aren't people racing?
I think racing is, from my personal experience, it's something you need to, it takes a long time to reach a stage in racing where you're confident on a race course, and that's the stage where you then begin to enjoy it. And it's a personal investment that you need to put in to get yourself to a standard where you enjoy racing. It's a complicated sport, as we all know. And the problem is people that you've introduced into the sport on an experience basis, they come along and enjoy a sail on the water and go away again. They don't even start on the path to enjoying yacht racing.
Maybe Nigel's technology trick with the bone conducting headset might be one way. I'm certainly very intrigued by that.
I agree.
Just quickly, I think on the payment side, the commercial side, I believe we've had quite a few questions in so far about that. Is that something that we can leap to now? It seems.
Well, I think it would actually be a very good time for another poll.
Okay.
A lot of the questions that have come in have been about how do you facilitate schemes like this, the membership, the maintenance, the investment, the technology. And our poll is going to be, could the RYA and the boating industry do more to help with the growth of such schemes and really provide a template for clubs to put these schemes in place and all of the legalities, and look at the best practice that has been done at different clubs, combine it all together and give templates which are applicable for each club. And a lot of the questions that have come in have been on that aspect. And so we've got the poll open right now. Please respond and we'll get that data for you.
Okay, good. Well, whilst that's coming in, whilst you're clicking whatever you have to click to make it happen, we'll move on a little bit now. So thank you once again, Mike, for that. Really, really interesting. Some very interesting points to come out of that. I think this is now a good opportunity to hear from our younger participants. Well, younger, they're 28. And Dom and Adam. Sorry, I just lost my place there. But is this? I mean, what are your thoughts, Dom? What are your thoughts so far on what you've heard? What are your immediate thoughts?
I think it's nice to see the whole sort of club setup trying to be a bit responsive, reactive to the change, looking at those trends over time and saying, what can we do? And I do agree. A lot of my friends, people I know through work and things, looking to sail on a much more ad hoc basis, looking for opportunities in busy lifestyles, busy working lifestyles, and just fitting it in really in any shape or format. And if the weather's nice and there's no wind, what better way to go out with a group of pals than on a stand-up paddleboard? And yeah, I think that's a great way to pull people towards clubs. Now, I've not quite grasped it in my head yet, whether you're still trying to work towards these people becoming full-time members, and are you still working towards the membership model, or are you actually trying to gradually change the whole shifting climate to a much more potentially fragile but volatile sort of financial situation where there's money sort of constantly coming in dribs and drabs rather than sort of big direct debits once a year from the sort of hardcore members, so to speak. So I think if you're trying to pull people in to become members more permanently, I think it's a nice idea. I think there's opportunity to do a bit of both at the moment while things change and you see the climate. Certainly for me, I'd been quite interested when I moved down to this area, looking around clubs and things. I was asking friends, club members, what there was to offer, and that there really isn't that much. Even with my sailing background, my membership of 2 other clubs elsewhere, I sort of felt I could just sort of walk in and step into boats, and I found 1 out of sort of 5 or 6 I asked to offer me a boat, and it was a sonar looking quite sorry for itself, but it worked. It had sails and we got out sailing, but it's that sort of concept. So,
we hear, I mean, we're sort of living in an age now where owning stuff is becoming less and less the thing, isn't it? We don't own music anymore. We don't, we seem to rent everything. Is that something that for your generation, is that just a given now? Are people expecting to be able to do that? And therefore, if they can't, then they won't actually even consider the sport?
I think there is something to be said about that. I think, yes, obviously still people are trying to, slave away towards owning houses and cars and other things, but and phones predominantly by the looks of things, or technology, but actually, I think people want to be able to find something almost at the Tesco, I don't know if I can use that, but click of a button type approach, and you've got it there and then. If there's any sort of obstacles in the way of that very quick flow and thought process, you might go wandering elsewhere, and that probably represents what I was sort of saying. I had a little look around, I probably could have pushed harder and harder and harder until I broke that barrier down and got some sailing. But I think if it's an easy, very quick click approach and accessible to the sort of social media group, and that people are out there, it's not that the population is decreasing at that age, the people are there, it's just how to access them and how they can access you.
And it's got to be good kit as well, hasn't it? That's the other thing.
It really does, yeah.
You mentioned the sort of rather shabby sonar.
Yeah, I think you've got to, hit it across all those levels, and obviously that's difficult for a small club to try and do. Hearing what Nigel was saying earlier, actually he hit the nail on the head with his group, and actually they wanted much more informal sailing. But when you've got a bigger club and a bigger variety of people looking to come into sailing or sail at your club, you sort of have to be able to offer something across those ranges, and that, I guess, comes back to the affordability of such a scheme and how professional you're willing to make it.
Adam, from the list of boats that you told us that you were sailing, and also the fact that you work in the industry and you're based down here, it doesn't seem like, it seems like you're pretty well connected anyway. So is this something that appeals to you? What are your thoughts about what you've heard so far?
I suppose I've been very lucky growing up through the different clubs I've been involved in. I've been a lot of members in the past have loaned me boats, so often I've crewed them in the past, and in return they come at a race. I was, offered that I could take the boat to use it. I tend to find nowadays that now I've got a little bit older and I work full time, that my kind of drive to want to go and make the effort to go sailing is probably less than it used to be. Certainly growing up as a child, if I ever missed a day sailing, I was devastated. Whereas nowadays, if I get the option to have a free weekend and I can go and explore on my road bike, then if I don't have anything organised, that's what I do now.
So the competition for time, that's something we hear again and again, isn't it? The competition for time. Liz, that was a strong part of Liz's research as well that we've heard from. One of the other things that are, one of the things, the next one I was going to ask you is that typical, would you say, within your sort of peer group and your friends? Are you?
I think it is. I think a lot of my friends who I live locally around here, if there is organised sailing or they've got someone to go sailing with, they will go sailing and enjoy, everything that a sailing club or, be it racing or being able to go and do the social aspect of being involved in a club is certainly very appealing. But given the choice and the, almost the decision of do I or don't I, they're more often than not, it's, probably swinging more towards they won't, and they will go and do, go out cycling or go out running or climbing or whatever their other interests are.
I wonder whether one of the other, this is a big topic in itself, and I don't want to open up a massive topic, but I think it's worth mentioning. I just wonder about the impact of social media and whether social media has now made being a member of a club slightly less relevant, or not less relevant, but less useful, in that you can communicate with your friends. If there's no breeze, you were going to go sailing, you're talking about it on Facebook and or whatever it is, and then you don't go to the club. I mean, is that something that plays a part in it?
Yes, I think that is the case. Can be the case. Certainly, I'm probably one of the biggest kind of sort of people that would, if it looks too light, I would say that I wouldn't want to go sailing because there's not enough wind. A lot of my friends in that case would then go and do supping, which again, I've seen some of the clubs here talk about, having that as an option. And I think that's, I know my club was invested in some sups, and had I been around more in the summer, I may well have gone and utilised the opportunity. If it was too light to go sailing, I would, go paddleboarding. So I think the idea of bringing other water sports into clubs, I think, is another pull that would, certainly for my generation, I think maybe we would consider kind of going down to the club a lot more with those other activities.
So it sounds like, from what's been said so far, you were going to go down to the club to go supping in no breeze. You'd just be joining a queue. It sounds like it's very popular. Good. Thank you very much for the time being. Yes, the poll. Actually, have we got the results of the poll? That's one thing.
Yeah. So, sorry, Jordan.
Yeah, we've got. Could the RYA and the boating industry help do more to support the growth of such schemes? The results very quickly in. 87% of you voted, and 69% said yes, definitely. 28% possibly, and a tiny 3% said no, I don't think so. So it's pretty obvious that the RYA, sorry, Alistair, and
I was just busy
the
making
boating
notes.
industry can do more, and I think it's a very good point in providing the templates, looking at the best practice, and then offering that up to clubs so that they can implement it. And let's face it, at the end of the day, if we can do that, it's going to benefit the RYA in new members, it's going to benefit the boating industry in more people within the sport. So in my book, it's a no-brainer.
Do we want to run another poll because we're going to go into some of the questions that have been asked, but I just wonder, do you want to run another poll?
Yeah, so we've got a good one here actually. What do you see as the primary limitation of such schemes at your club? So the answer is not enough volunteers. Another one, club culture and tradition. Participators not becoming members. Cost of running the initiative for the club, and maintenance boats and equipment. So I'm just going to launch that one.
Okay. Right, well, whilst you're considering that, what about some of the questions that we've had coming in?
Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, thanks very much everyone for the questions. We've been inundated. But a lot of the questions are around money, funnily enough. And there's one question here for Mike and Itchener. So Mike, you talked about the £30,000 grant, which really set up your scheme. And it was how did you fund that? Where did you get that?
No, our boats weren't funded by a fund. We did come and see the RWA. He pointed out that no money was available. But so we went to our members with an appeal. We convinced them of the idea of what we were trying to do, went to the membership and said we'd like to buy 3 boats. This is what the cost will be. And they by a collection from the members, we funded we kick-started it with an initial funding because we made a decision we wanted good new equipment to make our life much easier. Other clubs have gone and bought 3 mixed used boats, and we just felt that would be more difficult. So this is the way we chose to go. So the scheme supports itself financially in that enough comes in from the usage to cover the depreciation, the boats sitting on the stage, insuring them, maintaining them. So in a couple of years' time, we'll be able to replace them with new again and hopefully sell these boats into the fleet. But kick-starting with money up front to purchase in the first place seemed to be the only way to make it stack up for us. And the same with the rowing. The rowers had an appeal and bought their own boat. And again, it's then sustainable to go on from there. But kick-starting it seems to be the difficult bit. And I'd be very interested to hear how Queen Mary managed to build up their fleet. By doing that, probably you've started with a smaller number, have you? And then that's made some profit and you've managed to buy well and find boats at the right price, or maybe been given a few, have you?
Well, in fact, sorry, Tony, just before you answer that question, I'm just going to add to it, because the other two questions are very relevant. So another question we've had in is, how do we administrate the payments? And I know that's applicable to all, but one that's especially applicable to Queen Mary and you, Tony, is the monthly membership fees and how you administer that. So maybe you can just give us an answer to all three.
Questions. So I think the membership was set up on the back of the training school to look at adults who are learning how to sail. So we had training school boats, but the fleet's growing, and it's growing through some grants. Sport England grant for 2 lasers, CETA landfill grant for a couple more lasers and some toppers. But there's plenty of boats in the boat park that aren't getting used. And once a year we go through the membership and we look at the people who haven't paid. And last year we claimed an RS200 and a Stratos, which are now in our fleet. Brilliant. And they're in much better condition than when the member left them. So if the member ever comes back, we'll have a conversation. But those boats are out and in the fleet. There's also Tony Woods, one of our active laser sailors, is starting a movement to look at the amount of abandoned lasers there are. There's nearly 250,000 lasers which are being produced, and these lovely fiberglass plastic boats are going to be around for many years. And if we can get an abandoned boat club, an ABC club, you don't need any funding at all to get that. And you can go around your boat park, probably pick up a few other boats as well. You don't need a grant at all to get those boats to get those boats going. I think so to come to the second question, which is probably about being commercial. There's two things. I mean, we're non-profit businesses, which means that we generate surplus. We don't generate profits. That's a profit-making business. So any surplus from being commercial charging money to provide a service, any additional surplus helps all members because it goes into club investment. And don't be shy about charging. We charge £25 an hour for a single hander, £35 an hour for windsurfing kits. We've done 1,000 hours of hire this year, so there's nearly £30,000 which is coming through just hire. Now that covers the cost of all the club's investment in windsurfing kit, which is around £12,000 a year. We've got a bank of about £45,000 worth of windsurfing kit alone, and that's alongside all the training kit, which obviously is used for the school. But we are a different model because we are exceptionally fortunate in where we're located. We're exceptionally fortunate that we have a large training school, which has taken years to develop. But that it doesn't, that model can be scaled down. And it's fear of the unknown. When I started, we were using SD Works for our direct debit collection, and 2 years ago they said we're not doing it anymore. We went, oh, okay, we better find somebody else, and we didn't know who we were going to go to. There's 87 providers, or at least there were a couple of years ago that we found, and we use Smart Debit. And if you go to the Smart Debit website, they've got some tutorials. Their systems for direct debit collection are fantastic. It's paperless systems, so you collect the information, which is just a direct debit guarantee. Clubs will already have a membership system which is set up. I think it's fear of the unknown. It's not as complicated as you think, and these people are there to support you and make it happen. There's some fantastic service that we've had from Smart Debit. I'm not on commission, but they've been very, very good to us because it was an absolutely critical part of the business that we had to maintain going forward. And as far as charging goes, I talked about the hire charge. We charge £79 a month to include tuition, and we charge £59 a month without tuition. And that means that we have a full-time bosun, 2 part-time assistants. We have, in addition, 2 hire assistants at the weekend. And the members, all members, have then 2 people there, if they're not helping somebody to rig or de-rig a boat, to help them launch and recover the boat. That sort of takes away from familiarity with the boat, because you've got somebody there to give them a hand. Often it's actually, these are assistant instructors who are new to the industry, who are then gaining their knowledge, because they've probably done a lot of single-handed boats, but actually they're now with 200s, Behears, all different kinds of other boats, so they're also learning. But you've got enough money, you're being commercial enough, you're savvy enough to create enough income to fund a fantastic service where the kit's being maintained, you've got that help at the weekend, and it's sustainable. And that's the difference, because if you don't charge enough, it won't be sustainable. If you charge the right amount of money, you'll grow your membership and it'll be absolutely fine.
Brilliant. Well, that's some good advice there. I think we're all jotting down smart numbers. Great stuff. I'm conscious that we are stretching over just over where we said we were going to finish at. Alistair, you had some comments to make, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really interesting this evening hearing from 4 very different clubs with different approaches, and I suppose this definitely isn't an excuse, but part of our challenge is we have very different regions and we have very different clubs within those regions. And I think what we found is one approach, so say for example the Queen Mary approach, doesn't always work with other clubs. And I think it's foolish for clubs to think that they can very quickly take an approach that works well on the outskirts of London and implement that in their club, which may be a gravel pit in the northwest or wherever. And I think, what we always try and lead clubs to do is just think of the outcome. What are they trying to achieve? Who are they trying to attract? And in doing that, you can really sort of think about how the scheme can really cater for that sort of target audience and sort of build that pay and play model around that audience and around what they're trying to achieve, rather than just copying another club, because it probably unfortunately won't work. So that's what we as the RWA try and help clubs with, and that's what our regional development officers will be doing out on the ground, really trying to work what's the outcome first.
It's interesting stuff, isn't it? And I think very much reflected in this debate here, where we've got 3 very different club experiences, and hopefully that'll help people out there who are thinking about how they might take this on board. Now, poll. So we've got the results in. Mark, tell us about the results. Remind us what the question was, actually.
Well, yeah, the question was about the primary limitation of such schemes at your club, and what really were your concerns about that. And first of all, 40%, not enough volunteers, and it's a problem that clubs are often seeing now, is getting enough volunteers maybe to run their own racing and just do the maintenance around the club. And so adding an extra thing to that could be a major problem. And it's interesting again, club culture. And this brings in this whole idea of change. And is this going to upset the balance people have got at the club? And 39% showing concern about that. The smaller parts, participation, they're not becoming members from that. That seems much smaller concern at 23%. The cost of running the initiative and also setting it up in the first place, as we've heard earlier, 44%. But the biggest one by far, there at 56%, is the maintenance of the boats and equipment. And I think it's going to be very useful to take a look at the clubs that are making a success of these schemes and seeing how that maintenance is being done. Is that on a volunteer basis, the bosun basis, and how is it being done? And I think it's, with all of these things, there's change brings fear. It does on all levels. And we've seen it this week at the Olympic level. The change of classes of boat has brought a huge amount of comments on social media. But the opportunity that it can also bring for clubs, especially in such a time of social change, I believe far outweighs any of the risks that are associated with that. And clubs are, while some clubs it would seem are absolutely fine from the poll earlier on, which said, no, we're happy with how things are. A lot of clubs are looking at membership and watching declining membership. And it is a case of embracing the opportunities from this, maybe starting small, but I think then just building it from that.
I'm sure that is the message, isn't it? Well, some very interesting answers there, and I guess quite typical. I think a lot of us that'll resonate with us, particularly the maintenance of boats and equipment. I guess we've all seen boats in the dinghy park, plenty of them getting abandoned. Great new ideas that then just got abandoned. But anyway, fantastic. Well, now we could go on even longer, I'm sure, but we're not going to go on for longer because we can't. But it seems like a good out list. I mean, the work carries on. Tell us about what's in store. Where do we go from here?
I think where we go from here is we've got a lot of questions to answer, which are up on the screen at the moment. And what I might suggest that we do is collate those questions and perhaps ask our visiting clubs tonight to help with some of those answers that we can perhaps sort of get back out to everybody who's attended tonight. A little exercise to perhaps get done, but I can see some very good questions there that we haven't had time to address. But bigger picture than that, we are aiming through this series of webinars over the winter to cover more of the topics that Futures has thrown up. The next session we're hoping to do middle of December on this whole subject of alternative formats, different experiences, water sports, introducing other activities in your club. And just on that, if there's a club out there listening in that has a good case study and would like to volunteer to participate, please do so, and please contact Alistair at the Sport Development Department at the RYA, the same link you got your webinar sign up from. So that's the plan, is the next one December, and then a couple in the new year to follow up.
Great, good stuff. And I presume people can still send in comments and questions by email, can't they? I think there is.
There's an email, so there'll be a follow-up email after the webinar closes, and then people can see the contact email address and just send questions to that.
Magic. And for those who haven't seen it, obviously they don't know because they haven't seen it yet, but it's going to be streamed online.
There'll be a recording available, so we'll make the link to that recording available.
Okay, so a link to a recording. So that's good news if there's stuff that you didn't quite catch as we went through, or indeed if you want to get other people, and please do get other people to come and have a look, show it to your clubs and see what they think. I certainly think there's, from what's been said this evening, there's an awful lot of interesting ideas here and a long way to go, and I think really quite exciting stuff. Okay, well that's it, I'm afraid. Thanks very much to our guests, Nigel Austin, Matt Wright, Mike Wickmore, Dom Turner and Adam Parry, and of course our panel, Alistair Dickson, Liz Rushall, Mark Jardine, and of course Tony Bishop, and of course you. Thank you very much indeed for joining. Thanks for doing the polls. Thanks for making that screen up there that you can't see, but I can go nuts at times. It's all been fantastic. I'm Matthew Sheahan. Thank you very much indeed, and I hope your dinner isn't burnt. Good night. Yeah.